Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. It's been a little while, I guess around 3 weeks now. We're still in the heart of the COVID-19 here, but being isolated means I get to spend more time with these guys. So this is my corn snakes part 2 video. In this video I'm just gonna really go over some general care of how to take care of a pet corn snake. I've got my laptop down here with a few highlighted areas that I want to talk about in this video, so forgive me if I'm looking down because I'm just reading my notes. So first off, I want to introduce you to this little girl. This is Ember. She was a rescue that I got about, I'm going to say 3 years ago now. She was 2 years old when I got her, and yeah, 3 years. She was 2 years old when I got her, and she's 5 now. She was born in 2015. So, this corn snake is only 3.5 feet long, which is very small for a corn snake. Corn snakes usually grow anywhere between 4 and 6 feet. But she was stunted, as a young one. She was literally kept in a shoebox for the first 2 years of her life. Now, I don't know the full story. I don't know if the original owners just didn't know how to care for her correctly, or whether they knew and just didn't care. I don't know. So I'm not going to pass any blames, but it is what it is. So she was kept in a shoebox for 2 years. She was barely fed anything at all. Adult corn snakes, as I'll talk about in my next video, usually get fed once every 2 weeks. She was lucky if she was getting fed once a month as a baby. And as a baby, they should be getting fed at least once a week, if not more. So she was starved. She was skin and bones when I got her. She has significantly grown since I got her. She was way smaller than this. So yeah, she was my little rescue. She was feisty when I got her. She bit me every time I went into her cage. Once I got her out, she was relatively okay, but getting her out was a chore. But it was just a matter of just doing it anyway. I got bit pretty much every day for 2 months. But I got her out, and this is the result now. She's part of my educational program that I'm getting up and going. Kids handle her now. People that are slightly afraid of snakes handle her now, and she's absolutely fine with it. She's what they call a scaleless corn snake. So actually, scaleless corn snakes are a cross between a corn and a rat snake. And they have no scales. So I don't know if you can see it, but she's completely smooth. There's no scales on her back. She does have a scaled belly. All scaleless snakes have scaled bellies. If they didn't have scales in their bellies, they wouldn't be able to move because they'd be too smooth. She feels kind of like peach fuzz, I guess would be the closest thing that I could think of to explain how she feels. She's a little fuzzy, but just smooth like skin because there's no scales there. She does get a little bit of scales closer to her tail, and she has a little row right on the top of her head, which is kind of cool. I like that. She's got little spikes down her spine there, but other than that, she's a scaleless corn snake. So that's Ember. That, in a nutshell, that's Ember. She's my smallest snake. Like I said, 3.5 feet long, so not too long. Yeah, so getting into corn snakes in general, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is housing them. What should you do? Where should you have them? All that kind of stuff. So, with corn snakes, wooden enclosures are suggested. This wooden enclosure behind me here houses both my corn snakes. Eve, that you let in the last video, is on this side. And this one lives in this side. There's a partition down the middle so they can't get to each other. But yeah, so they live in that wooden enclosure. And wooden enclosures are just easier to keep humidity wise and easier to keep temperature wise. So that's why they're recommended for corn snakes. The minimum size that you should be looking for a corn snake is kind of equivalent to a 20-gallon fish tank. So about 12 inches wide, 12 inches tall, and 30 inches long, somewhere in there. These guys are in way bigger just because I can get it. You know, that's just the minimum requirement. If you can go larger, great. The larger the better, because these guys do move around. They do like to climb. They like to check things out and all that fun stuff. So these guys are in 25 inches wide, 25 inches tall, and 20 inches long. So that's what each section of these is. So this is like huge. It's better to start in a smaller enclosure if you're going to get a baby. Any type of snake. This doesn't just go for corn snakes. This is any type of snake out there. If they're babies, start in a small enclosure, work larger as the snakes grow. Because as babies, they're pretty much bottom of the food chain, and so they feel more secure and less stressed if they can hide and they're not in a great big wide open space. So start small as a baby, work your way up. These guys are on aspen bedding. So if I can switch her over to my other hand here. Come here, girly. Oh, you're wiggly tonight. So this here is aspen bedding. It literally just says aspen snake bedding on it. This is what they're in. It's literally just loose bedding. That's all it is. It's very easy to clean and just kind of sift it out. Once a year I completely dump it out and put all new stuff in. But other than that, it's just spot cleaning. It absorbs the moisture from them and stuff like that, but it doesn't make it too dry, so that's definitely a good thing, because these guys do need a bit of humidity. For ventilation, they don't need a lot. This cage behind me is wooden frame, plexiglass on the sides, and then mesh on the top. And that's what they get for ventilation, and they do quite fine in it. 1 snake per enclosure. Do not house more than 1 snake per enclosure, because they will fight. The only time these snakes come together in the wild is to breed, and then they separate again. They don't stay together. The mothers will lay their eggs and leave. They don't stay with the eggs. They will fight if they're housed together. So 1 snake per enclosure. You want a warm side and a cold side in your enclosure, which I'll talk about that in a second. But you want at least 2 hides in your enclosure. So you want to put 1 hide on the warm side and 1 on the cold side, so your snake can choose where they want to go. Climbing branches, like I said, these guys like to kind of cruise around a bit, so any type of branches that you can give them that they can climb is good. Greenery, if you want to, you can do whatever you want with that. Make sure you have a water bowl in there. These guys don't really soak in water, but of course they need it to drink. So your water bowls don't need to be that huge. I've never seen these guys sitting in their water dishes. Never. So, yeah, they don't swim. They just don't. So just a small bowl for water is fine. For the humidity, these guys don't really require a lot of humidity. It's good to watch them when they shed. If you notice that they're shedding in pieces, they need a little bit more humidity. So in that case, you can put in a humid hide box. So essentially what that is just a Tupperware container with a hole cut out in the lid, and you can go to your local pet store and get some reptile moss that you can throw in there, add a little bit of water, and they can go into the container and get that humidity from it to help them shed. These guys, both her and my other one, Eve, I've never had to do it with. My rat snake, he has a humid hide box, but these guys don't. They've never, they shed quite fine all in one go, so yeah, they don't need that much humidity. For the temps, I talked about a hot side and a cold side earlier. They're cold-blooded creatures. Most snakes are, but these guys are definitely cold-blooded, which means they cannot heat themselves. So you need to heat them for them. In the wild, they would normally bask on rocks in the daytime that are heated from the sun, stuff like that to warm themselves. But in captivity, we give them heat lamps. So you can't really see it in this video, but up on top of the cage, they have a heat lamp. There's two ways that you can heat them. You can either give them a heat lamp, or you can give them a heat mat. Both you should use with a thermostat. You can get ones that have dial controls in the cords, which are thermostat controlled, so you can make them hotter or make them colder. Both should have a thermostat in them, for sure. Personally, I don't feel very safe with the heat mats. I've heard of too many horror stories of snakes getting burnt because of the heat mats, because they're warm, so they lay directly on top of them and they don't move, and then their bellies get burnt and that kind of stuff. People have had success with heat mats. There are breeders and stuff out there that do use heat mats successfully. But personally, I just find the heat lamp works so much better for me. So that's what I use. Lighting, they don't really need light. It's good to give them a day and night cycle. So like if you've got your cage in your living room gets light during the day and it gets dark at night. That's all they need. I'm in a basement suite, so I get no daylight down here, so I have a lamp hanging up above them over here to give them extra light during the day. So that's on during the day, off at night when I sleep. But if you're in a naturally daylighted area, that's all they need. I was going to talk about feeding them, but I think I'm going to wait for that, because next video that I do is going to be a snake feeding video. So I will talk about everything that you need to know about feeding your pet corn snake in the next video, and that'll include what size of mouse you should feed them, how often you should feed them, how you feed them. You'll get to watch her and my other corn snake eat, all that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to watch a snake eat and you're not interested in that, don't watch my next video. I will put a warning on it, but that'll be my next video, so just warning you. But if you're interested and curious, or you think you were going to get a corn snake, or any other type of snake for that matter, you might want to watch it, because it's going to be educational. As far as brumation goes for these guys, I had mentioned in my last video about brumation. I'm not going to go into great detail on it, because I've never put my snakes through brumation. I don't breed, so that's normally what brumation is for, is if you're breeding the corn snakes. Some breeders don't even use brumation, but it can be helpful. What brumation does is it helps you guess when the snake is going to ovulate, so that you can put in the male with her. Usually when they come out of brumation, they'll have what they call a post-brumation shed, so they'll shed their skin, and then right after that they ovulate. So it's an easy way for breeders to guess when to put the males in with the females. All brumation is kind of like the equivalent of hibernation. You put them in a room where they don't get natural daylight, where it's dark all the time. You drop their temperatures right down. So in brumation, you can lower the temperatures right down to 41 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 5 to 15 degrees Celsius. So that they keep them really cold. You don't feed them, you don't do anything like that. They're in that state for about 3 months. And then you bring them back and you raise their temperatures, you feed them, you bring them back into daylight, and then you breed them. Pet corn snakes, like these guys, you don't need to put into brumation at all. They're awake all year round. I do find that in the winter months, these guys will slow down. They do not cruise around in their cages near as much. They sleep a lot more. They still eat, they still shed, they still do all that. They just sleep more. They're not cruising around the cage. Summertime, they're all over the place. So they do naturally slow down. But all in all, you don't need to brumate them if you're not going to breed them. The last thing I wanted to talk about was how you take your snakes places. So I've had a lot of questions of how I do that. So this one and my other corn snake, Eve, are part of my educational program. So I take them to different places, libraries. I want to take them to schools eventually. I can take them to pet stores. I take them to birthday parties. I can take them anywhere. I've got 2 ways that I transport my snakes. So this is one way. If they're going to be in it for quite some time, this is just a cat dog carrier that I got at the pet store, and I've just filled it in the bottom. I don't think you can see it really well. There it is. I've filled it with aspen, like their tanks, and I just put them in there, zip them in, and they bury into the shavings just like they would in their enclosure, and they're quite comfy. So if I'm going to be away for a few hours or something like that, that's normally what I put them in, just to give them a little bit more room to move around and they can look around that way and stuff like that. If I'm going from point A to point B and I'm not going to be very long or something like that, or here's a trick for you, if you're going somewhere and you're going to have to stop for a meal and go into a restaurant, you don't want to leave these guys out in the vehicle or something like that. So this is a trick for you. I got this bag made personally. You cannot buy these anywhere. I have a lady that is very crafty, and she made this bag for me. It's got a zipper in it, and it's all fleece lined. So I just put the snake in here, zip her in. It's got a mesh in the front so she can still get airflow and look out through there. And she can't get out because it's zippered. And then when we go into the restaurant or anything, it's got this little flap on it that I flip over like that, and people think it's just a nice fancy purse, and they never guess that there's actually a live reptile in here. So if you're in my area and you ever see me carrying this bag around, you're gonna know that either this one or my other snake is inside of it, because it's the only time that I use that bag. But it's just a little trick I found. I got kind of tired of like being limited in the places that I could go because I had a snake with me, and pets aren't allowed. So nobody ever knows that I have it in there, so I'm breaking the rules a bit, but it's so much more convenient for me. I don't take them out, so nobody knows. But anyway, those are the 2 ways that I travel. If I do travel with them in the winter time, which I do, I just make sure that my vehicle is nice and warm before I take them out. And going to other places, if it's cooler in there, I've gone to a couple of libraries before where it hasn't been overly warm, and like I said, these guys are cold-blooded, so they need heat to be active, and when you're with an educational program, you want them to be moving around to kind of show off, right? So I'll take a heating pad with me, just your normal everyday heating pad, slip it under half of this so that half of it is warm and half of it is cold, and so they can choose which side they want to go on to, and they're quite fun. So that's how I travel with my snakes. um, Other than that, I think I've covered pretty much everything that I was going to cover. If I've missed anything that you have any questions on, please comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer whatever questions you have, whether that's just you're curious or whether it's something that you need to know because you're going to be getting one or have one and don't know the answer to. It doesn't really matter. Other than that, oh, I should talk about shedding. So snakes go through a period where they will shed their skin, and they do that essentially for two different reasons. The first reason could be that some of the scales got damaged. Sometimes my other snake, Eve, will rub up against her tree or whatever, and it'll pull some scales away, so she just figures, that's kind of uncomfortable, and she'll shed. Other times it's because they're growing and they need to, their skin is getting too tight and they need to get out of it. Snakes, as I mentioned, I think in the last video, never stop growing. They reach a time in their life where they significantly slow down in growing, but they never do stop. So they're always shedding their entire life because they're always growing. So a snake will go into a period called blue, and if you have a black-eyed snake like this one, you will notice that their eyes will literally go blue, and that's where it gets the name from. And what that is it's the skin pulling away from the eyes. So yes, they do not have eyelids. I've been asked this question I don't know how many times. Snakes do not have eyelids. They can't blink their eyes. They don't close their eyes when they sleep. They do not have eyelids. They have skin right over top of their eyes. So when they shed, you'll see an eye cap because the skin is still there. So, yeah, the skin's pulling away from the eye. The eye will turn blue. If you have a red-eyed snake, like this one over here is, my other snake, I'll notice that her colors will just get really dull, really pastel-like, instead of bright and vibrant. And that's how I know she's in blue. A lot of new snake owners get very confused after that. So they'll go into blue, they'll stay in blue for a few days, and then they'll go back looking absolutely normal. Like nothing is going to happen. And that's the part that confuses all new owners, because they're like, they're back to normal. Where's the shed? There's nothing in the cage. Nope, they haven't shed yet. They go back looking completely normal. They'll be normal for about a week, somewhere in there, and then all of a sudden they'll shed. So if your snake has gone into blue and is looking normal again and there's no shed in their cage, it will happen. Just give it a few days. It will happen. It's very confusing at first when you first get a snake. But yeah, it will happen. So just be patient. Other than that, that's corn snake care 101. Corn snakes are not very hard to take care of. They essentially take care of themselves. You just clean their cage, give them food and water, hold them when you want to hold them. Other than that, they're very easy snakes to take care of. After the initial setup of their tank and stuff, which can be expensive, like getting the tanks and the bedding and the lights, like the heat lamps and the branches and all that, that can be very expensive. But after you get everything all set up, they're not that expensive. I spend about $60 for about 25 mice, and that lasts me about 6 months. So it's essentially, it's like $10 a month to feed your snake. That's all it is. My dog costs more than that. So they're not that expensive to keep once you got everything set up. The heat lamp that's above there, oh goodness, I haven't changed that in probably about 4 years now, and it's still going strong. It hasn't stopped. Oh, another thing you'll want to get is a digital thermometer. So you can see my digital thermometer hanging on the tank right here. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of digital thermometers out there. That's just one type that I got. But you want to continue to check their heat. So I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but you should keep your hot side of your tank between 70 to 88 degrees. Closer, that's Fahrenheit. Closer to 80 is better. So around 30 Celsius. These guys I keep at about 28 Celsius, and they seem to be quite fine at that. That's their hot side. Their cold side, you can just room temperature. I keep this area at about, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just room temperature for them, and that's fine. So you always want to have a digital thermometer to continuously check their heat, just to make sure that your heat lamp is working and the bulb hasn't stopped working, and that it's at the right temperatures, because your temperatures kind of fluctuate between winter and summer. So in the winter I have to turn it up a bit. Summer I turn it down a bit just to keep it at about that 28, 29 degrees Celsius mark in the hot side. I usually check the heat when I feed them, so that's every 2 weeks, unless I figure something happened and they're not hot. Like, you can definitely tell, like, when I go into their enclosure to pick them up, if I'm underneath the lamp, I can feel the heat. So if you can feel the heat, you know it's working. But if you can't, you're going to want to check it. They need the heat because, number one, like I said, they're cold-blooded, so that's the only way that they can get warm. And number two, for digesting purposes. If they're cold, they're more likely to have issues digesting their food, which can cause them to regurgitate their food or throw it up, essentially, and that can injure your snake inside. It can injure their esophagus and their throats and stuff like that. Snakes have been known to die after they regurgitate their food, so you don't want them to regurgitate. So yeah, it's very important to have the heat with them, especially when you fed them. I'll talk more, like I said, about feeding them in the next video, so we'll go into all the details of the heat and stuff like that, and what sizes and all that. But yeah, that's Corn Snake Care 101. Ember was my little sidekick for this. My scaleless corn, my little rescue baby. It's all pretzeled around my hand. She likes to pretzel. She always pretzels. My other one will like wrap around my arm and stuff, but she tends to stay around my hand just because she's smaller and she feels more secure that way. Yeah, so if you like this video, give it a like. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'm going to leave some links in the description box to my Instagram and my Twitter. So if you haven't followed me there, please do. I post different videos and pictures of all of our pets in the house. give you all updates on anything that's going on. So do that if you haven't. And I will be posting the next video, the snake feeding video, in roughly 2 to 3 weeks, something like that. So keep your eyes open, and I will be back. Thanks, everybody.